Egor no more. The Nashville Predators have traded fan favorite Egor Afanasyev. We're going to talk about that decision and tell you why Predators fans may see more moves like this in the near future.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast, and thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off our Monday episode with a hello to our Locked On Pred heads. Those are our everydayers who tune in each and every weekday to talk Nashville Predators hockey with us. We thank you for your support, and we love that we get to spend a little bit of your day with you. I'm Ann Kimmel. I am a writer at Penalty Box Radio, and my friends, I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Emma Lingen, and I am the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
The Nashville Predators made a big decision when it comes to the prospect pipeline yesterday, trading fan favorite forward Egor Afanasyev to the San Jose Sharks. On today's show, we're going to talk about why Nashville made the move, and we're going to tell you a little bit more about the player the Predators got in return who isn't totally unfamiliar to the organization. Also, another announcement this weekend as well as the Nashville Predators hire a new assistant coach. We're going to talk about that on today's episode too. But before we dive into all of that, want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sports stop sportsing like we all want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, Emma, big news breaking yesterday. Egor Afanasyev has been traded to the San Jose Sharks. In return, the Nashville Predators are going to, quote, keep Ozzy Wiesblatt, who came here from San Jose in a loan this season. He played down in Milwaukee a little bit. Before we dive into like all the nitty gritty of this move, I just want to know, like, overall, how surprised are you by this move?
I'm not that surprised, to be honest. I think we've talked about on this show before how Philip Tomasino was a guy who could benefit from a change of scenery trade. I would also put Egor Afanasyev in that category. I think that he's a guy that it just seemed like, especially the writing has kind of been on the wall ever since he was called up for that brief stint. You know, he was leading the AHL in scoring this year, gets called up to Nashville, only plays 2 games, and then gets sent back down. To me, that was when, again, the writing was kind of on the wall. It looked like the organization had maybe moved on from him in terms of what they believe he could be. I think that initially the thought was, oh, this is our future at, we want this guy to be a top 6 forward. I think that, he has clearly reached an elite level in the AHL, but we just weren't seeing that translate at the NHL level. And so it almost just seemed like he had capped out in his potential with the Predators organization, and not saying his potential at all, but it's just, with everything else in the organization, his path to the Predators NHL roster, much less the top 6, just seemed very unclear. Now he goes to a place like San Jose. Granted, he's an RFA now, so it's really just his signing rights that have been traded.
Correct.
And then San Jose has until July 1st to make a qualifying offer. But I think that, in an organization like San Jose, Egor has a much clearer pathway to crack the NHL roster, have maybe that bigger role that he intended, or, that is desired of him, than he would in Nashville. So, I hate to say it, but you kind of saw that coming, especially after the very brief call up he had earlier this year.
Yeah. And Egor, he was the 2nd round draft pick in 2019. So, you want to see a pick in the second round. Of course, you always want to see that come to fruition. But I agree with you. Igor's path between the AHL, NHL, it's just been such a slow burn. And I feel like everybody has waited to say, okay, now he's ready. Now he's ready. And when you saw his performance in the AHL this season, it really seemed like here we are. Now we're on the cusp of what we've waited for with Egor. And in that little time period before he was called up in February to Nashville this year, he was a part of that win streak that the Milwaukee Admirals were on. He played 14 games in that stretch. He had 20 points, 8 goals in those 14 games. So it really seemed like, here it is. Here's Egor, like we've finally gotten there. But again, like you said, called him up, brought him in, bless his heart. One of those 2 games was the 9-2 Dallas game. Crowns in heaven, Egor, for just sustaining to get through that. But while he was up here, there were times where during his call up, he was a healthy scratch. He didn't play. And when that happened, you almost see Nashville saying, yeah, this was sort of a last chance when we saw him excelling in the AHL and brought him up, and it just didn't work. And, when he was here, even last season, at the end of the season, he played, 17 games and definitely played through that stretch where everybody and their brother was out and injured. Man, did he have to struggle to find the back of the net, And so it just wasn't the trajectory that I think everybody wanted for Egor. And here's what's real. This guy is a fan favorite, and he's a fan favorite, I think, for a reason, just personally super engaging, super charismatic, lovely, truly a lovely, lovely person, and somebody that I think everybody in Nashville felt like, okay, this guy's going to be the future. I agree with you. Change of scenery. This is somebody who is going to benefit from going to San Jose. As much as, we may hate to see him go personally, this may be the very best thing for him. He may take steps forward in a different system, but it really felt like the slow burn, like the candle had sort of flickered out in February.
Yeah. And one thing that I also, related to that, I want to point out is just, I can't predict the future. I don't know what's going to happen with Egor and his career trajectory, but because I've been in this market long enough and know Predators fans well enough that I can just see this potentially happening. If Egor goes to San Jose, goes to San Jose and takes off and just like skyrockets, he's, scoring left and right, and he's exactly the player that that we were all expecting or hoping he would be with Nashville. I beg you, please go back, rewind 2 minutes to how we started this conversation, which is that in the system in Nashville, he was not going to get there. And so that's the whole thing, is that people saying, oh, we gave up on him too fast, or, see, I'm already getting mad at people for an argument that they haven't even made, but I'm like,
yeah, but you're right. That's the argument that's coming. It's coming.
It's like, success. I still, it's like shades of Ellie Tolvanen, right? I think it's just, they're going to, if Egor goes and has the season of his life with San Jose, and all of a sudden he's finding the back of the net and he's, just excelling, everyone's going to say, oh, Nashville gave up on him too quickly, or, it was horrible decision making or whatever. You can't look at that stuff in a vacuum. You can't look at him or his career in a vacuum. It's like the system in San Jose gives him a clearer pathway to the NHL. And in Nashville, that just wasn't going to happen. And that's okay. That doesn't mean that he's a bad player or Nashville gave up on him, or it's just, it doesn't fit. And that's okay. You gotta, it's better to learn that now and cut your losses before you are now very financially indebted to this kid. And so, I agree with you. One of my favorites, truly a joy to be around. I love him, and I truly, truly want nothing but the best for him. And with that said, I do believe that the best for him was not going to be in Nashville.
Yeah, I agree with you. It really felt like they had reached a point where it was sort of going to be called. and not in a way that's favorable to him. And I think where San Jose is opens a lot more doors
Yeah.
for Egor than where Nashville is as well. So I agree with that. Nashville, in return, they are getting Ozzy Wiesblatt. He was loaned to Nashville from the San Jose Barracuda. So if you have watched Milwaukee Admirals games towards the end of the season, this is a name you're going to be familiar with. First round draft pick in 2020, 31st overall. Not necessarily your offensive explosive player, but this is somebody who may gain a little bit more being in the Nashville Milwaukee pipeline than he would in San Jose. Like you're talking about, this may be a fit. Now, do I think Ozzy Wiesblatt is going to be a top 6 guy in Nashville? Probably not. But I do think this is somebody that Nashville feels like maybe they can get a little more out of. And that is part of why they made this deal.
Yeah, I think again, it's another change of scenery trade.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he clearly, like you said, he was on loan from Barracuda in Milwaukee. He clearly made an impression, a good impression, and fit well in the system there. He was meshing well with the system and with the other prospects. I mean, he had 6 points in 16 games with Milwaukee during the regular season, and then 9 points in 15 playoff games. So not exactly, like you said, not a goal scoring powerhouse, but that's okay. I mean, if you look at him compared to Afanasyev, he's faster. He is a faster skater.
Huge.
He's very physical, and he's not afraid to take a hit either. And use his body. And I think that is important. And, if you just watch him play, he's one of those guys that this goes into him being fast, but he will not hesitate to take a hit. He won't hesitate to get his butt back to the other end of the ice to play on defense. And I think, again, if we're just talking about systems and styles and what meshes well, I think he was not, like you said, just like Egor didn't have the clear path in Nashville, Ozzy didn't have the clear path in San Jose. So just a little switch and, hope that it works out for the best for both of them. Plus, I think the Predators just see Wiesblatt as the better prospect at this juncture for the organization.
True.
Because he was drafted the year after Egor was. And then he's going to be an RFA next offseason. So they get one more year of him. And then again, they'll have one more year of him in Milwaukee. Will we see him in Nashville this year? Probably not. But that, you get another year to develop him in this system. And then if you don't like it at the end of the year, you just cut your losses and you move on from him too. And you haven't really lost that much or invested that much. And I think that's another thing that, to me, this indicates, if you're trading a guy like Afanasyev for someone who I think we can all recognize will probably not make the NHL roster this year, barring something like what happened in 2022-23 when everybody gets hurt. I think that indicates to me that the Predators are probably going to be pretty active on the trade and or free agent market this offseason when it comes to making moves for NHL players, like established NHL players. So that kind of piques my interest now, because it's all right, we just traded away a guy who could have potentially made the roster next year for someone who probably won't. And so now that means okay, what else are we doing here? What else is happening? So there's a lot more to come. But we just don't know exactly what it's going to look like yet.
Yeah, I love that. Coming up, I'm actually going to piggyback off of what Emma is just talking about and tell you why I think we may see more moves like this Egor Afanasyev move coming up for the Predators. Also, Emma and I did a little digging on Ozzy Wiesblatt, and we just found something so interesting we have to share it with you. So we're going to talk about that all coming up in just a moment. First, want to let you know today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Look, we love sports. We love them so much, we never want them to stop. But as the playoffs are winding down, we get fewer games and the sports aren't sportsing like we want them to. But FanDuel lets us keep the sports going whenever we want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There is something for everyone, new customers, old customers, everyone in between, every day, all summer long. So head over to fanduel.com/locked on and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, Emma, talking about this move, kind of Egor off the roster, you mentioned, okay, this may indicate that Nashville may be a little bit more active when it comes to fleshing out an NHL roster. And I think this Egor move is something that Nashville Predators fans kind of have to buckle up for perhaps a little bit more of, because I think Nashville is at a point in this reset where they really are doing hard evaluations on prospects and where they're at and what potential they have and how they're going to fit in the next 2 to 3 seasons. And I think we can all agree, it just didn't look like there was a good path forward for Egor here. But I think we could see this with other players. And I'm talking about players like, and I hate to say it, Phil Tomasino. So a move like this, while you hate it, fans love him, you hate to see him move. I think this is a trend that's going to maybe continue in the near future for Nashville, because they absolutely have to sort through what they have in the pipeline and who are realistically going to be NHL pieces they can use in the next 2 to 3 seasons.
Yeah. And I think like you said, they're kind of going through, you don't want to say cleaning house because that makes it sound like they're taking out the trash. It's nothing like that. It's
Like
just
that.
like,
Yeah.
okay, what fits here and what doesn't? And it doesn't, I think it's just, especially as you get closer to the draft and you're going to be building up that pipeline again, you need to look at okay, what are our real needs here? Are we going to remain committed to these players that we've drafted earlier just because, it's like, well, we're stuck with them or,
Right.
something
In
like
for a
that. I
penny,
think
in for a pound,
right. And it's like, we have this vision for Afanasyev to kind of develop into this top 6 forward for Nashville. Well, okay, let's have a reality check here. It's looking like that's not happening. So let's cut our losses now before we have invested too much. And then we are stuck with him.
Right.
By stuck, I mean, you sign him to a big, expensive contract that's impossible to move. I think it is going to be hard, I know, because fan favorites, Tomasino's another guy who's a fan favorite, and all for good reason. I think the one thing, if I'm not even sure how much this will move the needle, but the one thing that Tomasino has going for him that Afanasyev did not is that Tomasino has shown success at the NHL level.
Yes, true.
Afanasyev has not. So I think that, how patient do they want to be with him? Because he's going to be an RFA too. So it's like now it's just kind of a critical juncture for these guys because they're RFAs. They're not going to be waivers exempt next year. So sometimes you do have to look around and make tough decisions. And I think that ultimately, I'm not going to, trade Tomasino before he's even gone, but I'm just saying that even with Egor, I think it's going to be, I think it's for the best just for him and the organization.
And I think there were 2 sides to this story as well, because there were rumblings that Egor was thinking about maybe going back to Russia if he did not feel like Nashville was going to be a place where he was going to get the opportunity that he feels like he wanted, and if he wasn't going to be able to get a contract that he felt like was what he was worth. And so I think for both parties, maybe you may find, as hard as it is, this could be, the right path for everybody involved. We'll see how it unfolds. Now, we do have to talk about something that may not be as on ice related, but my goodness, Emma and I ended up down a rabbit hole, and we just can't not share this with you. little bit of hockey trivia. So we were, talking about Ozzy Wiesblatt, who the Predators, have gotten in their, was a part of this Egor Afanasyev move. And I very innocently said, I wonder what Ozzy is short for. And friends, the wheels came off the bus because Emma and I did a deep dive and we have learned so much about the Wiesblatt clan. So, Emma.
We have. So what started as a search for what is Ozzy short for, and I can't say this definitively, but I think we've landed on it's not short for anything. I think that's just his name.
Yeah.
It started as a quest for that information. Ended up, my mind was blown. I think Anne was concerned. I think you were concerned for me.
I had
because
a moment
I was,
of, is she okay? I don't know what's happening. Is she okay?
I was speechless. In looking for Ozzy's name, which turns out is in fact Ozzy, I discovered that Ozzy is actually the most conventional of the names in his family.
Of the Wiesblatt boys.
Yes, he has 3 brothers. They all play hockey.
Yep.
So he is, I think we determined he is the second youngest. Yes.
25,
Okay.
24, 22, 20.
Yes.
We have learned so much, y'all.
We know so much about the Wiesblatts now. But okay. But you'll understand why in just a moment, because we know Ozzy.
Yeah.
The names of his brothers.
Buckle up.
At 25 years old, we have Ocean. 24 years old, we have Orca. And then Ozzy at 22. 20 years old, we have Oasis, spelled,
come on,
Oasiz.
Let's go.
Now you see why I was speechless for such a long time. I think, I'm like, I'm sorry, we have to share this. How is no one talking about this? Like, this is like the most interesting mix of names in a family, like
ever.
I think that I've ever seen. Like, it's like I have so many questions now. I cannot wait. I cannot wait for Ozzy to get here for training camp, and I need to be like, bro, we need to have a conversation.
Emma and I, we have speculated on what is the middle name that goes with Orca.
Yeah,
and
is it like you said? Is it Orca John?
Orca John. Like what is this? Like, so we just felt like, I understand that that's not statistical analysis. I understand that the names of his brothers may mean nothing when it comes to the future of Ozzy, but you need to know that Ozzy is the regular name.
Yes.
In his
and that apparently it's not short for anything.
Because
I was expecting we were going to find out his name, it was short for like Oswald or something, and then we could have a good laugh at that. But I was like, oh no, Ozzy's actually very normal compared to the rest of his family.
Yep. Yeah. We opened Pandora's box and the Wiesblatt family was in it, y'all. So there you go. And again, they all play hockey. So
they do.
Keep your eye out for Ocean, Orca, Ozzy, and Oasis with a Z.
God, just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it?
It does. It does. Gosh. Now, there was also, real quick, we do have to talk about the fact that there was another change announced this weekend in Nashville. We're going to talk about the new assistant coach hired by Barry Trotz. Today's episode is brought to you by our great friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That's the formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit. Only available to U.S. customers. All right, Emma, do need to talk about one other announcement that came this weekend. The Nashville Predators have hired assistant coach Darby Hendrickson. He is joining a bench that he is very familiar with. This is not a new face to Andrew Brunette. And I think it's going to be an interesting addition. Was formerly with the Minnesota Wild as an assistant coach. Spent 14 years, y'all. That is an eternity when it comes to NHL coaching. With the Minnesota Wild, was let go at the end of the season. And is joining Andrew Brunette now behind the bench as the assistant coach. What do you think about this hire, Emma?
I mean, I think it makes total sense. You know, as soon as we learned that Dan Heino was not going to be returning, that the Predators were not renew his contract, which officially ends June 30th. I think, you know, that we all kind of assumed it was going to be Andrew Brunette bringing in another one of his own guys, similar to what he did with Derek McKenzie last year, as is his prerogative. You know, I think it makes sense. You want to have a staff of your guys and guys that you've worked with before, that you're familiar with. I think it, you know, they didn't only coach together in Minnesota. They were both assistants in Minnesota, but they also played together in Minnesota during their playing years. So they go back a ways. And you add in the fact that he has also worked with Predators assistant coach Todd Richards. And so there's a lot of connections there. You know, I think that it makes total sense. I don't know exactly what his responsibilities are going to be on, you know, in the role. As we mentioned before, Dan Heino responsible for the penalty kill. We don't know if that's going to be a 1-for-1 swap with Hendrickson, or if the penalty kill will maybe go to someone else and they'll start shifting responsibilities that way. Don't know yet.
I went back and listened to an episode of Locked On Wild. Seth Topol is the host there, when the Minnesota Wild announced that they had let him go. Let Hendrickson go. And it was really interesting because he said, look, this is a guy who they have loved for 14 years. He has been an assistant coach under every coach but the first coach of the Wild, who he played for. So he has survived a number of the chopping blocks. And, you know, Seth said, look, this is somebody who didn't lose this job because of anything he did. It was just probably a case of, again, John Hines want to bring in his own guy, and the Wild kind of felt like maybe they had to do something. And so the guy that's been here for 14 years is going to be the guy that they do something with. So it's going to be interesting to see where he fits in, what Andrew Brunette kind of assigns him to do. I believe Seth said that he did a lot defensively with the Wild. So, you know, let's see what his role is going to be here with the Nashville Predators. It's going to be great to kind of get to know him and see how he fits in. Do want to wrap up this episode, though, Emma, tonight, Game 7. It what has to be the most bat poop crazy Stanley Cup Final I've ever encountered in my life. How are you feeling ahead of Game 7? And do you want to make a prediction?
No, I don't, frankly, because I have already eaten crow already, because I said, you know, once Florida goes up 3-0 in the series, and I'm over here like, ugh, this is so boring. This is annoying. Like, the conference finals are always better than the cup final. Like, they're just better. You know, the cup final has never been a good series and never goes the distance. And this is just another example. Edmonton didn't come to play. Like, they're getting exposed, all this stuff. Well, friends, it is now 3-3, and we are going to Game 7. And no, I would not like to make a prediction, because I truly have no idea. Like, no idea. And that's rare for me. Like, I mean, not saying that I'm always right in my predictions, because I'm certainly not, but I usually at least have a feeling one way or the other. I couldn't tell you. Like, anything could happen tonight, and I won't be surprised.
Yeah. This is going to be wild to me, because I am a a heart hockey person more than a head hockey person. And there is just, I'm not sure there's any good way for this to feel okay, because to see the Florida Panthers lose in 7 after being up 3-0, and the way that they just absolutely went through the postseason like a hot knife through butter, only to lose, would just be mind blowing to me. Mind blowing. The flip side is, I so want Edmonton to win for Matthias Ekholm and for my friend Paige Martin. But if they don't win, how heartbreaking to have drug your way, clawed your way back into potentially winning it and not like there's just no way to feel. All I'm going to do is sit and watch tonight and hopefully not feel anything and just take it all in, because this is insanity. This is insanity.
It is. And I again, I'm with you. I was rooting, no matter who was in the final, I was rooting for the Western Conference team. It turned out to be Edmonton and Matthias Ekholm. Part of me now almost doesn't want them to win, only because if they win, then it'll be in Florida and it won't be as special as if they win it on their home, especially because Canada hasn't won a cup in so long. Like that, but at the same time, I'm sure they, in the grand scheme of things, they don't care. Like if it happens in Florida, they just want the cup. And that's fair. This is, again, me thinking with my heart. I'm like, oh, how nice it would be to have it happen at home. But I don't know. I will say, I don't really have feelings one way or the other. I'm hoping for a good game. I hope it's not a blowout. I hope that it's exciting.
It's gonna go. Here's what I'm afraid / hope happens. It's gonna go to double overtime.
That would be how this series would end.
That would be how the series would end. I don't know. I'll tell you what, Florida looked like somebody had kicked their puppy after game 6. And I'm like, you all have some mental work to do. Not that I'm saying they can't do it, but that's going to be impressive for them, because they just looked absolutely shell-shocked. And I'm like, you all came out in a game 6 where you could have walked away with the Stanley Cup and you just weren't there. So
walked away in game 4 or game 5. And you didn't.
And you didn't. What are you doing? So can you do it in game 7, or can Edmonton just pull off magic? I don't know, but you can bet I will be watching and emotionally eating as it goes on.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to see what happens tonight in game 7. Of course, Emma and I will be back tomorrow. And we're going to want to talk about what happens in game 7 as well. Also, coming up this week, we are going to announce a new Locked On Predators insider program that's going to be available to our Locked On Pred heads. So stay tuned for all of that information this week. And we've got the draft coming up Friday and Saturday, so we're going to be talking about that this week as well. Tons of great information coming at you this week from Locked On Predators. Before we sign off, though, Emma, let everyone know where they can find you and find your work.
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingen, where you will definitely want to stay tuned, because I will be at the draft in Vegas and posting a lot of content on there. But you can also find all of my written work at the Hockey News.
And you can find me on social media at AnnK_Mama on Ice. I won't be at the draft, but I'll be emotionally eating from my couch. Not as interesting content as what Emma will bring you, but there will be. You can find my work also at penaltyboxradio.com. That's going to do it for today's Monday episode of Locked On Predators. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about whatever happens in game 7. We'll see you then.